A few months ago, I was looking for inspiration for my photography portfolio. I loved exploring abandoned buildings. They held stories, secrets, and a unique beauty. The eerie whispers of decay always drew me in. One day I decided to visit an old factory on the outskirts of town. The factory was crumbling. Rusted machines sat on the concrete floor, almost like forgotten giants. Tall grass grew wild around the entrance, and the air felt thick with dust and memories. I walked through empty halls, snapping photos, feeling a mix of creativity and unease. It was quiet. At first everything felt normal, just me and the echoes of the past. But on my second visit I saw something move. A strange shape brushed against the wall in a dimly lit room. My heart jumped. I thought maybe it was just my imagination, or the way the light hit the rust. I forced myself to keep exploring, but a nagging feeling settled in my stomach. Over the next few weeks I went back several times. Each visit brought something more unsettling. I started hearing footsteps when I was completely alone. At first I told myself it was just the building settling or a stray animal, but the sounds felt too deliberate, too human. I tried to ignore it and focused on my photos, but the more I shot, the more I noticed blurry figures in the corners of my images. I couldn't remember anyone being there when I clicked the shutter. Every time I returned, the atmosphere changed. The walls felt heavy, like they were closing in. I felt chills, even on sunny days. Something was watching me. I couldn't shake the feeling. I found myself looking over my shoulder often, half expecting to see a familiar shadow lurking behind me. One hazy afternoon, I noticed a figure standing just beyond the doorway, where I'd seen that shape the first time. I squinted to see better, but I couldn't make out any features, just an outline. My chest tightened, and I took a step back. I wanted to leave, but something kept pulling me closer. The figure didn't move. I wanted to run, but my feet felt glued to the floor. The air grew heavy, almost thick, like it wrapped around me. I stumbled back a step. Why couldn't I move? The echoes of footsteps grew louder, surrounding me. Finally, I turned and sprinted for the exit, my heart racing. As I ran, I felt a rush of cold air behind me. I dared a glance over my shoulder. For a brief second, I thought I saw a face, but when I turned to look, there was nothing there. Just shadows. Weeks later, I still think about what happened. I replay it in my mind. Was it real? Or just my imagination? I thought I was losing my mind. But I felt it, and that feeling haunts me to this day. I haven't gone back, but I keep wondering if it will ever let me be. A few days passed, but the factory wouldn't leave my mind. I tried focusing on other projects, but I kept glancing at the photos I'd taken. The blurry figures stared back at me, taunting me. Then, I made a decision. I couldn't just walk away. I had to know what was happening, so I put on my backpack and grabbed my camera. I felt nervous, like I was heading into danger, but I needed closure. When I arrived, the factory loomed in front of me, its broken windows resembling dark eyes. I hesitated for a moment, then pushed open the creaky door. Inside, sunlight streamed through cracks in the roof, illuminating the dust particles that floated lazily in the air. I stepped forward, my heart pounding. Everything felt eerily quiet, not even a breeze. I raised my camera, taking a deep breath to steady myself. Focus. Just focus. I walked through the familiar halls, remembering the sounds of footsteps that haunted me. I paused in the room where I'd seen the figure, glancing toward the corner where it had stood. Nothing. Just shadows. But the air felt different, charged, like static before a storm. My instincts screamed at me to leave, but I pushed through. As I explored, I took pictures, trying to capture the beauty in the decay. But every time I clicked the shutter, I felt a weight on my chest. I ended up in the old break room, where broken chairs slumped against the wall. That's when I noticed something shiny on the floor. I crouched down. It was a small, tarnished locket, half buried in the grime. I picked it up, my fingers brushing against the cold metal. As I opened it, a chill ran through me. Inside was a faded photograph of a young woman, her eyes staring out with a pained expression. I could almost feel her sorrow. Then, from the corner of my eye, I saw movement again, I whipped around, but there was nothing there, just empty space. The clattering sound echoed through the break room. I dropped the locket and instinctively reached for my camera, hoping it could capture whatever was lurking. Suddenly, a loud bang came from behind me. It was like a gunshot. My heart raced and panic bubbled in my throat. I turned to see the door slamming shut on its own. I rushed forward, but it was locked, the handle twisting futilely in my grip. Then, everything went dark. The light flickered, and I felt a rush of cold air sweep through the room. I stumbled back, bumping into a table with a loud crash. My breath quickened as I squinted into the dimness, trying to see. I felt something brush against my arm. I screamed. My voice echoed back at me, swallowed by the silence. I was not alone. I tried to catch my breath, heart hammering in my chest as the darkness closed in. I raised my camera, using its flash to pierce the blackness. A brilliant burst lit up the room, and for a brief moment, I saw it. A figure darting away, just out of reach. My breath hitched. Was it real? I stumbled back, trying to steady myself. The cold air wrapped around me like a vice. I felt trapped, the walls closing in. The break room felt bigger than before. My mind raced. What was happening? Was I just losing it? I took another step, careful to keep my gaze moving, looking for anything that could explain this. A flicker of movement drew my eye to the far corner, where I had caught the glimpse of the figure. I crept closer, camera raised and ready. Suddenly, I noticed something on the wall. A series of scratches, deep etchings that formed words. I squinted, trying to make sense of them. "Get out," they warned, jagged letters that sent a thrill of fear down my spine. My hand trembled as I snapped another picture. This place was more than just abandoned. It felt cursed. A shuffling noise behind me made my stomach drop. I spun around, breathless. It was just a rat scurrying across the floor. I let out a sharp breath I didn't know I was holding, relief washing over me. But it didn't last long. My instinct told me I wasn't alone. Something else was whispering through the shadows. Just then, my camera's screen lit up, displaying the last photo I took. It showed the break room, but the distant corner where I'd seen the figure was darker, almost like a shadow was being cast from nowhere. I felt my pulse quicken again. I zoomed in, desperate for answers. That's when I saw it. The figure stood there, indistinct but clearly present. I nearly dropped the camera in shock. It was not just a play of light or shadow. It was there, watching. A sinking dread settled in my stomach. It was time to leave. I didn't care about the locket or the eerie scratches. My survival instincts kicked in. I bolted for the door, but when I reached for the knob it felt wrong. I twisted and pulled, but the door wouldn't budge. Panic surged through me again. Why wasn't it opening? Was I trapped? The air felt heavy, and the whispers grew louder, echoing warnings in my ears. Then, a hand gripped my shoulder, firm and cold. I whipped around to face whatever was behind me, but there was nothing. Just empty space. I let out a scream that echoed through the factory, the sound desperate and raw. I glanced back at the door one last time. It cracked open slightly, creaking on its hinges. Was it a way out or another trick? My instinct screamed for me to run, but curiosity held me. I could feel the presence lingering, as if waiting for my next move. In that instant, I made my choice. I had to see it again. What was it trying to show me? I took a step back into the darkness, camera raised, ready to capture whatever truth lay hidden. The thrill of fear pulsed through me as I stepped deeper into the shadows. With the door swinging wider, reality began to blend with the unknown. I felt eyes on me, and shivers raced down my spine. Something awaited me in that darkness, and I was determined to uncover it. The darkness enveloped me as I stepped further inside. I could feel the air shift, thickening around me like a fog. My heart hammering, I clicked the camera, casting light onto the cold, bare walls. The flash bounced back, illuminating peeling paint and shattered glass, but it was all too still, too quiet. I swallowed hard, trying to shake the unease that gripped me. As I turned back toward the corner where I had seen the figure, I cautiously moved forward again. The whispers of the shadows pressed in on me. I felt like I was walking deeper into a trap. My camera clicked again, and I took another photo in the hopes of capturing something else. That lingering presence felt stronger now, more defined. Then I caught a glimpse of something on the floor, a locket. My heart skipped. It shimmered faintly in the dim light, and I bent down to pick it up. It felt oddly warm in my palm, as if it had absorbed the emotions of this place. When I flipped it open, a swirl of pain coursed through me. Inside was a picture of a woman, her smile hauntingly familiar. Suddenly, the shadows around me flickered. I felt a rush of cold air. It brushed against my skin like icy fingers. I looked up, sensing something in the corner of my vision. There was more movement. This time, I saw it clearer, a wisp of a figure darting behind a shelf. I held my breath, gripping the camera tighter. "Show yourself," I managed to whisper. But all I heard in reply was the echo of my own voice, bouncing off the walls like a taunt. The air became electric, prickling all over my skin. I was losing it. I backed away, clutching the locket tightly. Whatever I had stumbled upon was real, and it was drawing me in. As I started to retreat, I heard a low growl reverberate through the space, a sound so primal and deep it sent chills down my spine. My instincts kicked in again. I had to get out. But just as I turned to flee, a crashing noise erupted behind me. I spun back around and the shadows twisted grotesquely, revealing a glimpse of what lay hidden. I felt my heart race as I backed toward the door. I couldn't breathe. The presence was so near now, whatever it was, and it filled the air with a sense of rage mixed with sorrow. I continued to feel the cold grip of dread tightening around my throat. The door creaked ominously, still ajar. I could feel the cold air behind me, but I couldn't take my eyes off the darkness. My feet felt glued to the floor. Then I saw it again, the figure. Clearer this time, more solid than a mirage. Its eyes fixed on me, filled with something I couldn't decipher. Was it a plea for help, or a warning to leave? I clutched the locket and forced myself to move, heart racing as I regained momentum. I rushed toward the door, driven by instinct. But just as I reached for the knob, the shadows moved closer, shifting around me, as if alive. The growl grew louder, reverberating through the very walls of the abandoned factory. Without thinking, I pushed through the door, slamming it behind me. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the quiet night. But as I stepped into the hallway, I realized I had left more than just fear behind. I felt the weight of the unanswered questions hanging over my shoulder. I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. I had looked into the darkness, and it had looked back. As I stumbled into the hallway, the flickering lights overhead felt mocking. I leaned against the cool wall, trying to steady my racing heart. My hands shook, the locket clutched tightly in my palm. There was a weight to it, a heaviness that made it hard to breathe. I needed to get out, but the memory of the figure lingered in my mind. Was it someone trapped, or something more sinister? I took a deep breath and turned to flee down the hallway. Each step echoed, amplifying my growing panic. The factory felt alive, watching me. Just as I reached the exit, I heard a noise behind me. A soft thump, then a creak. I glanced back, heart in my throat. The door I had just slammed was slowly pushing open. I was certain I had latched it. Fear rolled through me. I hesitated, torn between a desperate need to escape and a morbid curiosity. Another sound, this one sharper, like something scraping against metal. I turned away from the exit, my feet moving of their own accord toward the sound. The camera hung around my neck like a lead weight, but I couldn't resist. I needed to know what was happening. I crept back toward the darkened corner of the factory. The whispers returned, filling the air like a haunting melody. I should have felt terrified. Instead, a strange determination clouded my fear. My fingers brushed the camera, and I instinctively took a photo, the flash illuminating the darkness. For a brief second, everything was bright. I squared my shoulders and peered at the newly revealed scene. What caught my attention in that moment wasn't just the empty space. Among the clutter, something moved. A shadow shifted, far too human, gliding along the wall opposite me. "Hello?" I called, unsure of what I was hoping for. My voice wavered in the silence, swallowed whole. It stopped. In a panic, I raised my camera again and took another shot, the flash slicing through the air. The figure appeared more tangible this time, its features flickering like static. It didn't seem threatening, but rather lost, as if it was searching for something. Are you stuck?" I felt foolish speaking to an empty room, but something compelled me to ask. My breath hitched. What if it wasn't just a figment of my imagination? What if it was trying to tell me something? Suddenly the air shifted again, heavy with an unspoken challenge. The figure seemed to throb with energy, drawing closer. I could see more details now: torn clothing, matted hair, a look of desperation that sent chills through me. And then it happened. The lights flickered violently, plunging me into darkness once more, leaving only the dim glow of my camera's screen. The growl returned, louder and angrier this time. Without thinking, I turned and ran, my pulse roaring in my ears. I barreled toward the exit, the sound of chaos erupting behind me. I felt like the ground was shaking, as if the factory was coming alive to chase me. As I burst into the night air, gasping for breath, I stumbled forward. I glanced back just in time to see the door slam shut, the sound deafening in the stillness. But before I could turn away, I saw it again. A glimpse through the glass, the figure's eyes piercing through the darkness, searing into my memory. There was something important it wanted me to uncover, something that tied us together. I didn't just escape the factory. I felt like I carried a part of it with me, a puzzle yearning to be solved. And that haunting face lingered just beyond the edges of my mind, waiting for me to return. The next morning, sunlight sliced through my window, but it offered little comfort. I barely slept. My mind raced with images of the factory and that figure. I knew I couldn't just forget about it. I had to go back. After breakfast, I grabbed my camera and drove to the factory again. Each passing moment only amplified my anxiety. I parked and stared at the structure looming before me. It felt different in the light. There was an unsettling stillness, as if the factory was holding its breath, waiting for me. With each creaking step inside, the memories flooded back. The dim light flickered overhead, a reminder of the chaos from the night before. I hesitated. Maybe I should have turned back. But the pull of finding answers was too strong. I needed to know more about that figure. As I moved deeper into the factory, I tried to remember where I saw it last. My heart raced as I approached the old assembly line, where shadows seemed to play tricks on my eyes. I raised my camera, snapping photos to ease my growing unease. Each click felt like a lifeline, a way to claim my experience. Then I heard it again, the soft thump from before. It wasn't just my imagination. I froze. My gut instinct told me to turn and leave, but I couldn't help myself. I followed the sound, keeping my camera ready. Rounding a corner, I stumbled into a small room, the remnants of what might have been an office. Papers were scattered everywhere, covered in dust. But right there in the middle was something that made my blood run cold. An old locket, just like the one I had found. My fingers trembled as I picked it up, heart hammering in my chest. The locket was open, revealing a faded photograph. I gasped. It was a picture of a young woman. The resemblance to the figure was uncanny. A wave of recognition hit me. "Who are you?" I whispered, glancing around the room, hoping for some sort of answer. Suddenly, an icy breeze washed over me. The air crackled with energy, and I felt the distinct sensation of being watched. I turned, camera raised, scanning the shadows, ready to document whatever appeared. The temperature dropped, and the whispers returned, clearer, calling to me from the corners. Before I could react, the door slammed shut behind me with a deafening bang. The sound echoed, and I was plunged into darkness once again. A high-pitched laugh rang out, sending chills down my spine. Panic surged through me. I pressed my back against the wall, trying to catch my breath. With shaking hands, I turned on my camera's flashlight, illuminating the cramped space. Shadows danced wildly as I spun around, desperate for a way out. That's when I saw it. A figure stood in the doorway. Not the previous one, but something more sinister. Something with sharp edges and a twisted smile. It took a step toward me, and I stumbled backward, my breath escaping in gasps. I was trapped, and the puzzle I thought I was solving just became a nightmare. I had to escape before I became part of this place forever. I pressed myself against the wall, trying to make myself as small as possible. The figure loomed closer, its grotesque grin stretching like a wound across its face. I wanted to scream, but my voice felt locked away, trapped like I was. With shaky hands, I aimed my camera at the figure, instinctively hoping to capture it, to make sense of what was happening. The flash burst to life, lighting up the room in stark white for a mere second. In that moment, I saw it clearer. Its features were blurred, almost distorted like a reflection in a broken mirror. Then everything plunged back into darkness, leaving me trembling in the silence. I didn't wait for the figure to advance. I darted for the door, my pulse pounding in my ears. My hands fumbled with the doorknob. It wouldn't budge. Panic coursed through me as I threw my weight against it, each impact echoing my desperation. The laughter returned, a sound both mocking and bone-chilling, filling the cramped space around me. The room seemed to close in, shadows reaching for me, but I wasn't done fighting. I remembered the window I'd seen when I entered. There was a way out. Without a thought, I turned and sprinted towards the back wall, hoping to escape whatever horror lurked behind me. I reached the window, heart racing as I pulled it open. The stale air rushed in, mingling with the scent of rust and decay. I didn't even hesitate. I climbed up, bracing myself against the edge. Just as I was about to pull my body through, I heard a loud crash from behind me, followed by the sound of something heavy hitting the floor. The distraction was enough to push me into action. I squeezed through the narrow opening, my body scraping against the rough edges. I tumbled onto the ground outside, gasping for air, the sunlight disorienting after the darkness. I looked back at the factory, its imposing structure feeling even more sinister in the daylight. But I couldn't linger. I ran from the factory, adrenaline driving my legs until I reached my car. I jumped in and slammed the door shut, shaking as I locked it. I needed a moment to collect myself, but thoughts raced through my mind. The laughter, the figure. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd narrowly escaped something terrible. Then, something caught my eye in the passenger seat. My camera. I hadn't reviewed the photos I took. My hands trembled as I powered it up. The screen lit up, and I scrolled through the images, each click echoing my heartbeat. The photos captured the hallowed emptiness of the factory, but then, there was one image that froze me in place. In the corner of the assembly line, partially hidden in the shadows, was a glimpse of something. A person? Or the figure? I zoomed in, squinting at the screen. It was hard to tell in the hazy light. My heart raced with a mix of dread and curiosity. I had to know. I had to go back. Before I could process it fully, the laughter returned, now echoing in my mind, twisted and cruel. I was being drawn back into the darkness, but I didn't understand why. All I knew was that the mystery had just deepened, and I was caught in its grip. I couldn't escape it. Not yet. I couldn't shake the unease that clung to me as I turned the car around, heading back toward the factory. The sun hung low on the horizon, casting long shadows that felt wrong in the fading light. Each bump in the road seemed to push me closer to the figure I had encountered. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my knuckles white. The memory of that grotesque grin seared into my mind. As I parked the car again, I couldn't help but glance over my shoulder. The factory loomed like a dark giant, daring me to step back inside. I hesitated, the engine's rumble fading into silence, only pierced by the faint rustle of leaves in the wind. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the tremors that rattled through me. With my camera in hand, I walked to the entrance, the door creaking open as if welcoming me back into its depths. The atmosphere felt different. The air was thicker, heavy with unspoken secrets. I stepped inside, the daylight fading quickly behind me. Shadows loomed and danced, urging me forward. I made my way to the assembly line, eyes scanning for anything amiss. And that's when I saw it. My heartbeat quickened, the same corner from the photo. I crept closer, hoping to see clearly what had caught my attention earlier. My breath caught in my throat as I peered into the darkness. There was a figure again, but this time it stood still. My intuition screamed for me to turn back, but a sick curiosity pushed me forward. I snapped several pictures, my camera flashing intermittently, illuminating details in small bursts. The darker the room got, the clearer the shape became, a distorted body twisted and wrong, leaning against the wall. Then, I noticed something on the floor. It was a piece of clothing, tattered and stained. It looked recent, not like it belonged to the factory's past. Cold panic washed over me. Someone had been here. Someone not too long ago. I backed away slowly, glancing over my shoulder. There was no one else. Just me and the shadows. But something felt off. It was too quiet. The echo of laughter that haunted me earlier was replaced by an eerie stillness, making my skin crawl. I took another step back, planning my escape. And that's when the lights flickered. For a split second I thought I had imagined it. But then they flickered again, plunging me into an even deeper darkness. I turned to run, but my breath caught again when I faced the figure. It was closer now, inches away, its face shadowed but still holding that grotesque grin. My heart thundered as I raised my camera. I wanted to capture it, to find some semblance of control in this chaos. But just as I pressed the button, the laughter erupted again, louder and more manic than before. I dropped the camera and stumbled backward, feeling the wall behind me press into my spine. My mind raced. I needed to escape. I spun around, searching for the exit. Suddenly, the eyes of the figure caught the light, reflecting a chilling glow. I froze, my body refusing to move. There was something more than fear in those eyes, a malicious awareness that took my breath away. I broke the spell, shoving myself away from the wall. My feet acted before my mind could catch up. I barreled past the dark shape and sprinted toward the entrance. I was almost there when a hand shot out, grabbing my arm. I gasped, the world spinning as I turned to face what had caught me. But as I looked, the figure began to blur, melting into shadows. Everything faded out, plunging me into total darkness. And in that silence, the laughter began again, echoing all around me, waiting to pull me under. Then, everything went dark. I woke up with a start, gasping for air. The cold, hard floor pressed against my back. My head swam as I tried to make sense of where I was. Light trickled in through a cracked window, casting a pale glow over the dust-covered concrete. I sat up slowly, still feeling disoriented. The laughter had stopped, but now a deep silence filled the factory. I pushed myself onto my feet, my legs shaky but functional. I couldn't let fear take over. I had to get out. The door I had entered through was still behind me, but I didn't want to turn around. What if the figure was waiting there? Instead, I turned the opposite way and headed deeper into the belly of the factory. The shadows seemed to cling to the walls as I moved, swallowing me further into darkness. I fished my phone out of my pocket, the dim light barely illuminating the path ahead. Every creak of the floor made my heart race as paranoia set in. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that something was waiting just beyond the shadows. I turned a corner and stumbled into what looked like an old break room. The air was stagnant, smelling of mold and decay. Papers were strewn across a table, yellowed with age. I shuffled closer, hoping to distract myself from the fear roiling in my stomach. As I glanced over a tattered newspaper, the headline caught my eye. Local factory to be demolished after mysterious disappearance. Panic bubbled up again. The story was dated only a few months ago. Suddenly, the pieces clicked together. The clothing I found earlier, the figure I had seen. What had happened in this place? I needed answers, but I was already beginning to question whether I wanted them. Just as I took a step back, something clattered to the ground behind me. I whipped around, heart racing, but was met with only darkness. A shiver ran down my spine. I turned to leave the room when I noticed the light from my phone reflecting off something shiny under a table. Curiosity pulled me in. I bent down and found a small metal key, its surface cold and rusted. My instincts told me to pocket it and keep moving. But in a place filled with unanswered questions, the key felt significant. I had no idea what it could unlock, but it could be my way to understanding the horrors of this factory. I glanced over my shoulder one last time, and then I left the break room. I moved back toward the main area, my heart thumping harder with every step. I felt a palpable tension, as if the walls were holding their breath. Then came that laughter again, but this time it was close, ringing inside my mind, reverberating through the air. I froze, mouth dry. I had to keep going, but every instinct told me to turn and run. I fought against it, forcing myself to walk. The laughter mixed with muffled whispers, taunting me as I walked the halls. Then I stumbled upon a large, locked door, its frame worn and grimy. It was heavier than the others, a door that hinted at secrets buried deep within the factory's history. I looked at the key in my hand and then back at the door. A new sense of urgency washed over me. What lay behind it? Was it the answers I desperately sought, or something worse? I took a deep breath, holding the key tightly, and stepped closer to the door, ready to unlock whatever waited for me inside. The rusty key felt heavy in my hand as I approached the door, anticipation and dread coursing through me. The laughter and whispers faded into a distant echo as I inserted the key into the lock. It fit perfectly, almost seductively, as if the door had been waiting for me all along. I twisted it slowly, the grinding noise reverberating through the stillness of the factory. With a resounding click, the door creaked open. I hesitated, heart racing, and peered inside. The room was dimly lit but clearly larger than any I had encountered before. Inside, dust motes danced in the soft light filtering through a grimy window, revealing a table covered in old, rotting papers and a series of shadowy outlines on the walls that made it look like the room had been abandoned mid-task, as though its occupants had vanished in a hurry. As I stepped inside, a heavy silence enveloped me. I closed the door behind me, the sound echoing like a reminder of my isolation. I scanned the room, my gaze landing on rusted machinery, remnants of the factory's history scattered haphazardly. Most unsettling, though, were the walls, which bore indistinct markings that resembled hurried scratches, like desperate pleas from the past. I moved cautiously, my senses heightened. I reached for my camera, instinctively documenting this moment in case it became crucial later. I snapped a few pictures of the room's decay, but when I looked at the images on the camera's screen, my breath caught again. In one photo, faint figures sketched in the dark corners seemed to emerge just beyond the peripherals of the frame, appearing only in the captured moments. I had stepped into something beyond my understanding, an ethereal space where reality blurred with something darker. Just then, a loud bang reverberated behind me, the door slamming shut on its own accord. The sound sent shivers down my spine, amplifying the urgency clawing at my insides. I flicked on the camera's flash, illuminating the room, and turned quickly to face where I imagined threats might be lurking. That's when I noticed it. A large, tattered canvas hung on the far wall, slightly billowed like it was being pushed from behind. I walked closer, compelled to uncover what lay underneath. With a quick tug, I pulled it down, revealing a mural beneath, depicting scenes from the factory's former glory days. Faces peered out at me from the paint, and within them, I recognized the same haunting expression that had frozen my heart before. The same anguish I had felt looking through the locket. The air thickened around me, pulsing with a dense energy, and suddenly I was engulfed in a wave of emotion that felt not just mine, but collective, like the essence of 100 lost stories resonating within these walls. The laughter returned, now mingling with a sorrowful wail that echoed through my bones. Before I could react further, the shadows in the room began to twist and writhe, congealing into that distorted figure once more. It advanced, its features clearer and more menacing than ever. A cruel smile stretched across its face. Adrenaline surged, and I raised my camera instinctively, capturing the moment. The flash illuminated the figure fully, revealing a face twisted in torment, a reflection of all those who had suffered here. But the moment didn't just capture the horror. Something in that fleeting light allowed me to see beyond its terror. For a split second, I felt its pain, its despair, and the weight of a truth that longed to be unearthed. My fingers trembled as I snapped another picture. Suddenly, my mind cleared, recognizing that this grotesque entity was as much a part of this factory as the rusting machinery or the peeling paint. I remembered the whispers. "Get out!" This was not a mere warning. It was a cry for recognition. I could sense its sorrow, a plea for release from the chains of this grim place. I stepped back, and the shadows shrank away, retreating as if my realization diminished their power. The figure faltered, hesitating, and in that instant, the room vibrated with a tremor. My heart raced, and the memories of all the factory's lost souls flooded back, converging around me in a cacophony of voices, each whispering its own story of despair, longing, and loss. Instinctively, I raised my camera one last time and captured every ounce of that energy. hoping this time the image would hold its essence. Their pain could no longer be ignored. But as I clicked the shutter, the image didn't just depict the figure. It showed the faces of the lost, those who had passed through these walls, their memories now forever entwined with mine. As if completing its cycle, the atmosphere shifted once more, receding and losing its tension. The figure, now a blend of shadows and light, looked almost peaceful, their tortured visage softening. And then, it vanished into the dark, leaving a calm where once chaos dwelled. I stood in silence, the echoes of the past gradually fading. The shadows across the walls no longer felt oppressive. Instead, they carried a gentle sigh of release. I turned to leave, unlocking the door easily this time, stepping back onto the familiar floor of the factory. But as I walked toward the exit, the weight of the locket in my pocket reminded me that I could never truly leave. I glanced back one last time, a chill running down my spine. Was that figure gone for good? Or had I merely postponed its return? I made it outside and took a deep breath of the crisp air, sunlight blazing down on me. But as I stood there, a lingering feeling curled in my gut, whispering that this was not over. I didn't know how I knew, but the factory still held secrets, and I had only scratched the surface. I turned my back to it, feet moving without guidance, but the question loomed large in my mind. What would it take for me to truly escape? I didn't have the answers, and that uncertainty gnawed at the edges of my confidence. I drove away, merging back into the mundane world, yet clinging to every moment as if I could evade their grasp. What I experienced shaped me, but it also tethered me to the unfinished stories still waiting in the dark. I didn't know when or if I'd return, but the whisper of that haunted presence would follow me, a ghost of my own making. I might have escaped the factory, but part of it would forever reside in me. The line between the supernatural and the natural continued to blur, beckoning me to confront the deep unknown once more.